Alright, Diablo players, so with the most recent brand new updates that we recently got from Blizzard on their article, a lot of people want to know what is the best class in Season 9. Well, more than likely things that are doing negative damage numbers like this Barbarian over here, these are probably not going to exist in the game. I mean, you can see the damage numbers going crazy here. However, a lot of people want to know kind of maybe what class to go ahead and lock in or even start planning right now if maybe you are a Eternal player. So I want to go ahead and mention that we will be using the brand new article here to kind of give some sources of what we can kind of expect to see. I have a nice little chart over here that kind of goes over with the new updates what classes will be able to push like what tier in what pit, and then I also have like a bunch of videos that show the pit clear from the PTR. Now with Diablo, I'm going to be straight up with you guys. There's a lot of times where certain things are bugged and certain best builds are always usually revolved around some sort of bug or unintended interaction. And they may actually update us via the campfire chat with some small changes, but they released this article that goes over a lot of the brand new updates, and some of them are so small that like it doesn't even matter, right? Like for the Barbarian, we get an additional cleave radius for the unique. That was the buff. Is it good enough? I'll be honest, probably not. But this way it can give you guys an idea on what you maybe want to play. So I'm not going to waste your time. I'm going to go straight into the overall kind of tier list for the highest pit pushing build. So as far as like the highest potential here, we're really looking at Sorc. We're looking at specifically the Spiritborn. Druid here is kind of an outlier. They made a crazy update here with the Druid that I think is absolutely wild, where they gave us, instead of 150% poison damage, we go to a 550% on the brand new unique. We also get 100% overpower, and we're getting another 200% of its damage right there, and you could have multiple of these poison puddles. So Druid is actually looking to be potentially actually even the super S tier, depending on how these poisons can actually overlap, and if you actually can overlap them, and if they can interact with other people's poison puddles, as there were certain things like Barber that did interact with other players. It was more likely unintended, but the Druid could be the contender for the most broken build in Season 9. We'll have to wait and see. But just with these stats alone, it's definitely going to be miles ahead of what it used to be. Because again, guaranteeing overpowers is really big. The area that the Druid generally suffered with is specifically, if you guys have played Pulverize, you know, it kind of sucks versus like single targets on the bosses because you need to ramp up that overpower via duration or kill or however you're getting it. But because the brand new system guarantees the overpower in the poison puddle, that's massive. So that's where Druid gets a massive buff. If anyone was a winner after the patch notes that came out last night, 100% is the Druid. So that's where kind of the best classes. So you're playing the Thorns, Spiritborn, Hydra, Sorc, and then the Poison Puddle Druid. For Barb, again, more likely the gameplay that you guys are seeing right here, this build is going to be dead. So they actually made it so you couldn't get like percent of the damage that you were dealing as a dot. It allowed you to ramp up for infinite damage. So where does Barb actually play with the brand new like changes here? With Barb, I'm going to be honest, it is laughably bad. Like in terms of like, will I be excited to play Barb? Because before it was super broken, and again, I understand them nerfing that, but then to give us extra cleave radius was like, it's not enough. So I wouldn't be too excited about playing the brand new Barbarian. But if we're talking about overall Barb, you could play Whirlwind Barb. Rob dropped a pretty good build guide on that. It was a pit 100, and so you can still play Whirlwind Barb or Earthquake Barb. There's kind of different variants of it mixed in. There's also the Pet Barbarian, but for the most part, you still can complete pit 100. Keep in mind though, you're gonna have to have like the best in slot for a lot of these builds anyways. So Barb is still looking pretty good if you want to play that. For Necromancer, if you're interested in playing the brand new Skele Mage, it tapped out at 94 via the pit. And then we also have the Bloodwave Necromancer going 107, as well as the Blood Spear. So Necromancer actually has quite a few different builds to play, but most people want to play the new stuff, and I get that. There was apparently a bug with the Skele Mage, so you can maybe bump it up a couple tiers. So if we can maybe bump it up maybe 5 tiers about, because some of the multipliers just weren't registering properly. They did not mention this inside of this over here in terms of the notes. However, they did say the time between shattering, which is kind of what the new super mega skeletons do, it's going to be reduced by 50%. So basically you're going to have a higher uptime on this like big damage boost. So if they fix the bug, which they did not mention here, and it was because some of the damage multipliers weren't working, and then you have another 50%, we could be looking at maybe even 10 tiers higher. So maybe up in line with like, let's say the Bloodwave Necro, but it's still not a bad build, especially for speed. To To be honest though, guys, I'm going to say if you like that minion sort of playstyle, the scaling mages are far behind the Hydra Sorc. Hydra Sorc, you just like throw it and they start going. The minions are like, I'll attack when I want to. They kind of behave a lot worse, to be honest, like in terms of the AI. So if you kind of like the minion playstyle, again, Hydra, it's a kind of different minion, but it facilitates that like fantasy of having kind of other things do your bidding, right? And I would just recommend the Sorc over that. For the Rogue, I'm going to report that unfortunately the Rogue is not really in the best spot for the brand new update. So what did Rogue get in the update? So what Rogue gets in the update as far as like the buffs, because the whole point of this video is like the updated tier list here, is that we got another 20x multiplier, and then instead of spending 10% life on the flurry, because how it works is you have to spend all of your resource, and then you bleed into your HP to actually facilitate your resources. It spends 8% to use Flurry, and it will last for 5 seconds, which will give you 70x damage. Now, the one problem with this item is it is a unique helm, which it has pretty good stats. It's got life, it's got rings to Flurry, it also has movement speed, which is okay, and then we have armor, but the unique power here is kind of where it is supposed to be really good. With Air Perdition, you could already get 60x damage plus another 200% to angels and demons, and then on top of that you also get another bonus of a massive amount of crit with that item. So as far as this goes, and on top of that you have to pretty much put in an aspect just for this to be able to spend your HP and then recover somehow, which can be undying. You can use a lot of different things. But basically, you have another hurdle to jump over because you're going to be at really low HP. So you may have to use a rune word for extra shields or something like that. So it is kind of gimmicky, and it just got increased by another 20%, like in total. So where it was at in terms of the pit pushing, it was at 90 on the PTR. That was the highest clear that we have on record. And then, well, you can maybe bump it up, maybe 5 to 10. 10 tiers would be really pushing it. I think like 5 tiers is kind of where I would say it would land. But that's what we're kind of looking at as far as like the Rogue. So the Rogue isn't really looking too good. Now, if you do want to play the Death Trap Rogue, it has cleared out on 100. There was like a proof of that again. I'll eventually just like maybe drop like this, which has all like the videos as well. I'll just put it in like the pin or something, as well as some other videos. This way you guys can have it. But as far as it goes, the Rogue best build is still going to be kind of what we've been playing, which is Death Trap. So it's a good and or bad thing. So I want to also show you guys some extra gameplay, just rotate some gameplay in the background. This is the class that I probably recommend. So this is like my overall tier list here for majority of players in terms of like pit pushing. Some classes will not be able to play the new thing, like the Barb thing. It's going to be kind of the same thing you've been playing for the past couple seasons with Necromancer. We'll wait and see. The scaling mages aren't terrible, but I think the Hydra is just like the superior version. So if we're looking at this from the viewpoint of a player that maybe has like already played some of those builds, like what is like the build doing now in terms of like the new build, like the Flurry Rogue or like the basic attack Barbarian. This is what we're looking at for a tier list. This is the overall tier list. It's actually not too bad, but there's things like the Spiritborn. Actually, also I should probably mention this. Spiritborn was able to clear out a pretty high tier pit. We have on record for the Thorns Spiritborn to do a 115. It's going to get nerfed pretty hard. You can probably drop it down maybe like 10 tiers. So to show you guys the numbers here to kind of facilitate for a better video, Spiritborn did lose out on the new Thorns pants. So instead of dealing up to 300%, you now deal 150% of your damage as Thorns as also poison. So there's a pretty big DPS loss here. However, they did also buff like some other thing that gives you like another 50%. So it's about like a 30-ish% like loss in terms of like the overall number, if that makes any sense. Sure, you're losing out on 150, but then you gain 50, so it's minus 100%, which is about 1/3. Hopefully that kind of makes some sense. So I still think the Spiritborn build will be absolutely amazing, but I'm pretty sure Hydra will be the fan favorite, and I already have the build guide, but I will be updating it as there were some changes with Hydra. But speaking of like the newer builds going over Hydra here, the thing with Hydra that I was actually surprised by is they actually buffed it. So they changed up one of like the passives here, but the better variant as far as we are aware of was like the Shatter variant. They didn't mention anything about nerfing Shatter. But I'll be honest, most people will probably not want to run the Shatter variant, as it's mainly oriented around getting these like big clumps to get these big Shatter effects, and it really wants you to have monsters that you can pop on the boss. That's a big issue with clearing out the pit. Some of these rank 1 builds, guys, they are requiring a very specific Pit Guardian to spawn in, and if you don't get it, well, you just don't clear it. But that's normal. Like with Diablo 3, if you don't get the power pylon or a conduit, some builds just can't function, right? So keep that in mind, that the best variant will probably still be Shatter, but the average player will just play the dot or crit variant. It doesn't really matter which one that you play. They're both fantastic, to be honest. But now the burn one is actually superior, even more, because, yeah, well, you don't really rely on crit anyways if you're doing dot damage. So then getting attack speed is cool, and there is no change to specifically this. I genuinely expected some sort of small slap on the wrist for the damage numbers, but Sorc pretty much came out unscathed. In fact, they buffed it, again, if you're playing the burn variant. And you're seeing, by the way, this is the burn variant. It still just deletes everything so fast. It doesn't feel like you have to apply the dot and wait for the thing to go down. It's just deleting everything, except for, of course, the pit boss. That'll take some time, but you can actually ramp up your damage with some of the different new powers. But for the most part, yeah, Sorc is in a really good spot. So if you're looking at specifically the new builds going into the new season, Sorc's got my double thumbs up for recommendation. I also feel like the Druid could be one of the best builds in the game with the Poison Puddle, with all of the numbers. You could absolutely go crazy and potentially have like the best build in the game because of the buffs with the Poison Puddle on the Druid. I mean, they just gave it, again, just so many nice changes. We get another huge damage multiplier, you get guaranteed overpowers, and it deals the damage when the puddles spawn in if no puddles around you, which before you was like every 10 seconds. I actually have the gameplay of the Poison Druid, and I'll be honest, I did not really like the Poison Puddle Druid because you would see this little poison puddle and then you would have none of it for 10 seconds. It used to like be like every 10 seconds, and now it just, if you don't have a poison puddle, it guarantees that poison puddle. So that's a massive, massive upgrade for the Poison Splash Druid build. And then for Necromancer, again, I already mentioned the Skele Mages. It was an okay build. We can go to gameplay of this. I actually have all of the gameplay. I recorded this one. But I just felt like the Skele Mages were just like a bad Hydra because they were always super far behind, whereas Hydras, I just spawn them in and they just start tagging everything. It just felt way better. And then with Barb, again, the basic skills nerfed, and then with Rogue with Flurry, it's just not up to par. Again, it's just like a numbers game on that one, to be honest. Also, requiring a new unique to be in the helmet slot, yeah, Harlequin and the Air of Perdition are very hard to replace. But as far as my class recommendations, to kind of give you guys like 3 tier lists in one here. So this is my overall tier list, which is like kind of like the generic whatever and kind of expects. But if you want to play specifically the new stuff in the new season, which is good because, you know, that's the point of a new season. Play the new stuff so you don't get burnt out of a game, right? This is where I would say this is this tier list for the new builds only. And then over here, this is Slaydra's recommendations. I think majority of players will have the most fun with the Sorc. The Sorc is going to give the easiest and smoothest time, especially towards the endgame. With the Spiritborn, you just need those pants and your build comes up online. If you are someone that does not like to farm mythics, Spiritborn is your build for sure. The Druid Poison Splash build is very, very good as well. And it's something where I feel like a lot of people just don't like the Druid class. There's a lot of things that you have to tag. They have made it easier with some of the updated aspects for specifically like Werebear to also count as Earth, to make sure all of your key passives on the legendary nodes will actually work with the Paragon system, because a lot of them is like you have to have Earth, you have to have nature, like it's just a pain. And so they actually made it a little bit easier with some of their updates. But as far as like, you know, as someone that you guys know, I love Rogue the most, but I can't really recommend the Rogue, and it's kind of sad because the Rogue, their best build is the same thing again, which is Death Trap. The new Flurry just isn't going to be up to par, and again, it's super clunky to play because you have to use all of your resource, then go into your HP, and then you have to obviously have a way to either get barrier or another way to get HP. There is second wind, which is pretty easy, but again, if that isn't proccing in your 1 HP, you're just going to get one tapped, and it's going to feel very, very bad. So I can't really recommend that class. And then with Barbarian, man, you've been playing Earthquakes and the Pet Barbarian build for a while, and hopefully we can get something a little bit more different. I'm hoping they can just make Hoda return. I think Hoda was one of the most fun times I had back in like Season 2. Season 2 was a great season for Barb and playing Hoda Barb. And then for the Necromancer, I would say that the Skele Mages are not bad. You guys are seeing the gameplay. Like, it's genuinely not a bad build. However, there is one huge change. Soul Rift no longer gives you barrier. And the reason why I'm putting this in like the B tier, which is the lowest in my recommendation, is because the build feels incredibly squishy. Because Soul Rift used to give you barrier, which would really help out, also applied vulnerability. It was a fantastic skill. But unfortunately, because the class is squishy, and if you like kind of summoning things. I know, again, Hydra's a little bit different of a summon. It doesn't like walk with you. The Hydra's just literally sitting in the ground. It's rooted there, but it's just a way better class overall. It's way tankier. You get teleport as one of the ability, and Necromancer's mobility. It's never really been the best in D4, right? Until they maybe get Blood Rush in the future. But these are my recommendations here for the tier list, as well as giving you guys an update on kind of like where the game is. Keep in mind, all of this is from the PTR. Obviously, with some of these, I mentioned that, like, yeah, with some of the updates here, the Hydra was, by the way, this was with a Shatter build. It's probably going to be a lot lower for your average player, but it didn't get nerfed is like the biggest thing. They didn't, I was really surprised that they didn't say like, okay, we were changing Shatter. This is with like the Skele arm pages over here, but like they didn't say that they are changing that. So for the most part, those are going to be my recommendations. And then like, again, some of these will go up like maybe like 5 tiers, except for the Druid, not the shout one, but the poison pool. You can see how far it was behind. I actually did this gameplay. I could have honestly probably pushed to like 80 with it, but with these newer buffs where you get guaranteed overpower and another, you know, hundreds of extra bonus damage is going to be pretty massive, especially if you can get double of these pools. You're not only getting like double DPS because you get 2 poison pools, but they're guaranteed overpowers every single time. And if you can overlap it, and maybe if you can pop other people's poison puddles, Druid has the potential though, guys, to be like the uber S tier class, and it's like the broken class of the season. And we're waiting to see if they nerf it, if it does interact with other people's pools, and if you can overlap like 4 or 5 of these again on the bosses, it makes the class so much more powerful if you can do it. There's just some sort of like gray area where we have to test these things out. So take everything with a grain of salt. With Diablo, again, the best builds are usually some sort of bugged interaction. Some things are double dipping. So keep that in mind as well. Anyways, that's going to wrap up the video. Let me know, guys, your thoughts on it. Or if you disagree and you have like, you know, you're like, hey, Slayer, I got proof that, you know, my Crone Staff Druid can do a pit 150. Hey, tell me down below because I'll update the tier list for you guys. But a lot of people wanted to know what is the new tier list after the Diablo news article came out for all of the new, like, change the uniques. But anyways, that's going to be it. If you're new here, drop a like, subscribe if you're new and do want to see an update to this in the future, because we'll probably have to update it. There's probably going to be some crazy OP, you know, cool thing to mess around with. Maybe it'll last a day, back when they had the crazy Rake Spiritborn that was doing 150, and then they nerfed that fast. But sometimes things go all the way through. Shatter's still been there. We still have, I believe, Jaguar double dipping. That wasn't mentioned in the patch notes either. But anyways, take care, and I'll see you guys in the next video. So basically, you want to be playing the Hydra Sorc, or the Spiritborn if you don't want to farm the mythics.